Good evening and welcome to the February 26, 2024 meeting of the Barnstable Planning Board here at Barnstable Town Hall, 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. We're in the James H. Crocker Jr. Hearing Room on the second floor, and it is 7 p.m. The meeting notice was previously filed with the town clerk in accordance with Mass General Law. All application materials may be accessed through the Planning Board website or by contacting Karen Pina at karen.pina@town.barnstable.ma.us or calling 508-862-4064. I will now call the meeting to order and introduce our board and staff members, starting with Matthew.
Matt Tay, good evening.
Michael.
Michael Messinas, good evening.
Tim.
Tim O'Neill, good evening.
Jim.
Jim Kupfer, Assistant Director, Planning and Development.
And Karen.
Karen Pina, Administrative Assistant, Planning and Development.
Excellent. Thank you all. Notice of recording. This meeting will be televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable website, streaming85.townofbarnstable.us/cablecast public site. And we'll now turn to the public for any general public comment this evening. This is comment not related to items on this evening's agenda. If anybody has any general public comment, please come forward, state your name for the record. Seeing none, we will continue to our first agenda item this evening. Matthew, do you mind reading the first A&R?
Sure. All right. For the Enoch Cobb Trustee, Heslinga Trustee has submitted an approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land at number 87 Oakmont Road, Barnstable, Mass., prepared for Cobb Trust, dated January 17th, 2024.
Excellent, thank you. And this is not a public hearing. The applicant is here and ready. Take it away.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouth Port, and helping Steve Heslinga, who's the trustee now for the Cobb Trust, out with one of the short form filings for a division of land up on the north side of town. This is just north of the Mid-Cape Highway. It's at one of the big old Cobb lots, wood lots, that were originally willed in the will of Enoch Cobb, who outlived, I think, 3 wives and 8 children, and donated all of his land to the school children of the town of Barnstable. So it's a very nice trust. Mr. Heslinga has been doing a wonderful job as custodian of that lately. These wood lots originally were intended to sell the wood off them and generate some monies, but the market's been a little soft lately for selling wood, and it's a renewable that's quite slow. So Mr. Heslinga feels confident that by selling these for a good market value, he can invest the funds and do much better for the school children than a vacant piece of land, which doesn't really generate any tax revenue for the town on the other side. So it'll be kind of a nice win-win for the town and for the trust, and also perhaps give some fairly reasonable housing for some of the new members of town or people that want to move on to, say you have a horse and you want a 2-acre lot. It would be a nice area to own. We met with the town and the engineering department. There's not too much to these A&Rs. The fundamental thing that you folks look at is, are you on a public way or not, as one of the first tests, and yes, we are. The road, Oakmont, was taken by the town of Barnstable, so it's nicely constructed, full width, 22 feet or so of pavement and drainage, suitable grades, and so you're never hesitant to sign an approval not required on a public way, on a town way especially. And so that is checked on the form of application. And the other thing you look at is to make sure that each one has adequate frontage and so forth, that there's not a gigantic, steep, sharp slope down or a guardrail or something that would prevent access. And in this case here, there is some rolling terrain, but you can see, and we met with staff and the fire department, we're going to create kind of a common drive area there for 2 or 3 of the lots to cut up the hill a little bit better so that they can grade, and still leaves a nice lot 1 on the side of that with a nice full width. And then once they get up over that hill, the first driveway will peel off, the second and third will peel off of that. And so there's some notes on there, and the fire department can look at the building department applications as they come in and make sure that the access to those back lots is suitable. There's town water available. It's not in a wellhead zone except the southeast side is, so the northwest is not. And they're great big lots at 3 bedrooms per acre even. You can have plenty of bedrooms on them. So they lay out pretty well. The tract of land has been established for a long time. It shows up on the Mid-Cape Highway taking sheet as the land that it is, Enoch Cobb. And we found all the monuments and surveyed it. There's one little chicken coop which is encroaching. You say we noted that for whatever reason on the east side of Lot 1. And the buyer of that can deal with that, gentleman, if it'd like. You can't get prescriptive rights against the town, and it's been in the municipal ownership for many years, but we did put that on there just as a notice that there's a little bit of encroachment on one of those lots. So with that, I think you could take a look at it and endorse as approval not required. There's 4 lots, each have adequate frontage on a public way. You don't necessarily look at zoning, but I'd assure the board that you have adequate area, which is the acre of upland. There's no wetlands on the property. Each lot meets the shape factor as adjusted. That's the perimeter square divided by the area on the lot, and the width is also met. So you're advised, I think, by some guidance to give the building commissioner a note if you see a glaring zoning nonconformity on an A&R that you endorse. But in this case here, I think staff would agree that everything looks in order and it can be properly endorsed without any caveats. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, sir. Very well done. Good-looking plan. And, great to hear that the proceeds will go to an excellent local cause. Matthew, questions, comments? None. Michael?
None, thanks.
Tim?
No questions.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the approval not required plan titled Plan of Land at 87 Oakmont Road, Barnstable, Mass., prepared for the Cobb Trust, prepared by Downcape Engineering Incorporated, dated January 17, 2024, as an approval not required plan.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor?
Aye.
Matthew?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Matter is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Michael, would you mind doing the second A&R this evening?
Right here.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Okay, so we have Susan K. Willer and Emily Willer have submitted an approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land of 150 and 178 Willer Road, Martins Mills, Massachusetts, prepared for Barnstable Land Trust, dated January 17th, 2024.
Thank you very much. And this is not a public hearing. And is the applicant here this evening?
Yes, again, Dan Ojala from Downkeep Engineering. We were hired by the Barnstable Land Trust to do a nice little division over here on the pond in the mills. This is adjacent to a large farm which they had bought and preserved to the east of us, a contiguous tract, so they had their eye on this and negotiated and worked to get some CPA funds to help buy it, and they're going to preserve this wonderful tract of land that's off that Wheeler Road over there as it heads out towards Middle Pond. There's developed with just one single little family house out there, and there's a little barn and driveway. The barn will be demolished. It's not exactly pertinent to what your endorsement, but just for general knowledge that it's all going to be conserved. They are going to preserve the house for some staff housing and so forth. But the other ones are completely conserved, and the majority of Lot 2 will be conserved as well against future development. And so it's a nice tract of land and woods that will be forever green, as they say. And it's nice because it's in the wellhead zones near the 3 lakes, and of course all that water eventually goes down to the south to the estuaries. So no new sources of nitrogen, just a nice natural area to try and keep the area green. Wheeler Road is not a public way, but it's a well-developed private way. There was a subdivision that was endorsed by the planning board, and the road was constructed. There's been many divisions and building permits issued off of it. So it has adequate grades and drainage and so forth, so that each 150-foot frontage that's required is along a paved drive, no question marks, no gravel roads of small width. So this is a 3-lot division. We could get 4 lots out of it easily, and we did a concept to show that. So right away, they've limited the development in only doing the 3, and then the CRs are being prepared to further restrict everything. And there's a water main easement that comes and feeds from the east, but that's barely visible on the ground today, and just a one little driveway to a small house. So that's all that will really ever be on here. It's a good project. It's got adequate frontage. Each of the lots meets area and shape, and does deserve, therefore, under the state law and your local guidance, to be endorsed as approval not required under the subdivision control law. Again, that's the short form filing where if the vital access standard is met, there's no reason to require a road and call it a subdivision. It's the approval not required signatures, which you're familiar with. But a good plan, I think, a good cause, and happy to be part of it and help the folks out. Be glad to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, huge piece of land. Great to be set aside, conserved in this manner, and a great project. Any questions, comments? Matthew?
No.
Michael?
None.
Tim?
The only question I have are the two easements that you referred. I'm assuming those were pre-existing easements?
That's correct, yeah. They're pre-existing easements, so the water is the official one that comes in from the east. The second, which would be just inferred, is the driveway easement. We'll be preparing a little sketch that allows that gravel driveway to exist, even though there'll be a strict conservation restriction on Lot 3. And then we could probably set it up so it could be relocated back onto Lot 2 if tides shift or something. But that's the other easement, yeah. So they both are, in fact, on the ground by the existence of the driveway and then the existence of the water line coming from the east.
And then I'm also looking at a 10-foot drainage easement. Looks like west down Wheeler Road. I'm assuming that's also a pre-existing easement.
Yeah, to the extent that there's even anything in it, we copied that from the original Wheeler Road subdivision plan, and so that may or may not exist, but it's shown on the plan as a reservation.
Okay, great. That was it.
Okay. Motion to endorse?
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to endorse the plan of land 150 and 178 Wheeler Road, Martins Mills, Massachusetts, prepared for Barnstable Land Trust, prepared by Down Cape Engineer, Inc., dated January 17, 2024, as an approval not required plan.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll
And-
second.
And a second. All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Matthew?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Matters approved. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Kelly Grant, who is with the Barnstable Land Trust, was here if there's any questions, but I'm glad it went smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next up, we have a preliminary subdivision plan. Tim, do you mind reading this one?
Sure, no problem, Mr. Chairman. This is preliminary subdivision plan number 828. WinnDevelopment Company, LP, has submitted a preliminary subdivision application for review, 307 Main Street, Hyannis, map 327, parcel 103. This is not a public hearing, does not need to be voted open or closed.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the applicant, Jim, would you mind giving us just a quick overview, for me specifically, about kind of the difference between preliminary and definitive?
Absolutely, glad to do it. Jim Kupfer, Assistant Director of Planning and Development. I'll give a rundown of kind of the background, difference between a preliminary and a definitive, and kind of why we're here this evening. So the subject of the application is for a potential subdivision of 307 Main Street. The applicant has submitted this preliminary subdivision. The purpose of a submission of a preliminary plan is to enable the applicant, the board, and other municipal agencies to discuss and clarify any identified conflicts or concerns of such subdivision before a definitive plan is prepared. So this is the very first step of a subdivision, and it kind of provides the applicant with some clarity as to the process before they dive into the nuts and bolts, the grand details of a definitive plan. The deliverable here from the board at some point would be less of a decision and more of a memo of items that the board may want clarity on or more description on for when they come back for a definitive plan, if they so chose. In the case of a subdivision showing a residential zone, which this is, any person before submitting a definitive plan for approval may submit a preliminary plan to the planning board and to the Board of Health. During discussion of the preliminary plan, information required for a definitive plan will be developed. So not only from this board, but from any department that you receive comments from. And you do have a letter in your package this evening from DPW with some great bullet points as to maybe some things that could be refined before coming back for any definitive plan. So that's a preliminary plan in a nutshell, and that's prescribed in our local subdivision regulations. You may be asking yourselves, or the public may be asking, okay, so we're talking about 307 Main Street. Didn't this already go through the process? And you are correct, it has, and that doesn't change anything with that process. However, Mass General Law 40A6 provides property owners with the rights to retain the zoning that is in place if they go through certain processes. There's three processes that they could go through. One is seeking a building permit. Two is an approval now required plan, similar to what you just went over just a moment ago, though that only affords property owners with certain protections. And then a subdivision plan provides for a somewhat more robust protection of the existing zoning in place. So I'll just read quickly the paragraph in which 48.6 applies here. If a definitive plan or preliminary plan followed within 7 months by a definitive plan, so you have your preliminary plan here, if they're going to pursue this route, you would expect another definitive plan within 7 months, is submitted to the planning board for approval under the subdivision control law, and written notice of such submission has been given to the city, town, or clerk, or city or town clerk, before the effective date of ordinance or bylaw. The land shown on such plan shall be governed by the applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance or bylaw, if any, in effect at the time of the first submission, while such plan or plans are being processed under subdivision control law, and if such definitive plan or amendment or an amendment thereof is finally approved for 8 years from the date of endorsement of such approval. So, and it continues on for other relative items, but really what that boils down to is if the applicant, the property owner, proceeds with a preliminary plan followed by a definitive plan, ultimately they retain their development rights on the property that is in place today. So that is what the board has been informed is the chief reason for the submission of the subdivision plan. Now, with all that being said, this board is reviewing a subdivision plan, and ultimately, within those 8 years, if they pursued that and then decided not to pursue that very first development, if you went through the preliminary and the definitive plan and gave approvals, that definitive plan could be constructed. So it's always, obviously in the planning board's best interest to review this with the understanding that it may be developed at some point. So looking at it at a holistic way and providing all guidance at this point at a preliminary level, and then certainly at the definitive level, looking at all the requirements that are necessary and reviewing it as if it was to be constructed. A preliminary plan approval doesn't afford the applicant any ability to construct. This is, again, just a list of items that the applicant should begin to prepare if they come back for a definitive plan. Just a couple quick items on what you have before you. You have your package with the narrative, plans before you. One waiver request listed here today. We did request correspondence from applicable departments. We did hear back from DPW, as I previously mentioned. We are waiting for a number of other departments, and those departments certainly can provide you guidance. If the board so chose to direct the staff, we could request that departments provide further input prior to any submission of a definitive plan. And obviously you have the procedures here, which I can quickly go over as well. Just the board shall, within 45 days of a submission, give such preliminary plan its approval with or without modification, or shall disapprove such plan, stating its reasons. The applicant shall be notified, certified by mail, and the board's decision and conditions of approval. So we have 45 days from the original application, which was almost 45 days ago. But we can mutually agree on an extension if the board needed that road. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. No, that was fantastic. Appreciate that overview. I know we don't see subdivisions a lot, so that was educational. And just before we begin, just Jim, one more thing. It seems to me like this is just an example of an applicant pursuing all development options before them prior to pulling a building permit. Obviously, we all know that a previous application has gone through the Historic Commission and site plan review. That's one avenue, and now we're looking at another avenue, which the applicant has every right to do because they haven't pulled a building permit on the prior, right? Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct. This is another avenue in which they can pursue prior to building permit.
And the existence of the other avenue that's already been started would not preclude them from going down this process.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. Any questions, comments before the applicant from the board? All set?
I do not.
Okay. Welcome.
Great, welcome. Paula Thompson from.
Is your mic on? Yeah, just make sure it's green.
It's green.
Perfect.
Paula Thompson from Beals and Thomas, representing WinnDevelopment. I'm a professional engineer and project manager with Beals and Thomas. We are seeking tentative approval of a preliminary plan. As you see up on the screen, this is a 1.8 acre site on the corner of Main Street and Old Colony Road. Current existing conditions, there's a vacant bank office building and a parking lot on there. And there are 3 access points to that building and parking, 1 off of Main Street and 2 off of Old Colony Road. We are proposing a 230-foot minor road for 5 multifamily residential lots. They range from 10,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet. We plan to have all the access off of Road A, so I know that was a question in the engineering letter, and we can get to that later. We're proposing a 24-foot wide paved road with a 90-foot turnaround access. And as Jim mentioned, we are requesting a waiver that we do not extend. The requirement is that we extend a dead-end road to the abutting lot to provide future access and frontage to the abutting lot. The abutting lot does already have frontage off of Main Street. And also there is an easement running along the western property line. And so we don't want to bring the subdivision road into that easement. We want to preserve the easement for the abutters. As you can see on this plan, this is a plan profile sheet, and it shows the required grading in accordance with the regulations. We have a 2-foot level area from Old Colony Road, and then a 6% road going up to a flatter 3% cul-de-sac. Water and sewer would be served from Main Street because there's no water and sewer on Old Colony. And the plan also shows a subsurface drainage system, collection system with catch basins and drain manholes. And then we would have, as each of the lots are developed, we would also have subsurface stormwater on each of those with their building and parking. That is the plan in overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have on the preliminary plan.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. To the board for questions, comments, concerns, starting with Matthew.
No, excuse me, the only, I just had a couple of questions about the DPW's memo, if you want to look at, have you seen it?
I just got it tonight,
Okay.
but I did take a quick review of it.
Yeah, the only question I had is they have a note here to provide a curb, inlet, catch basin, leach pit, and overflow structure connected to the municipal stormwater collection system at the south of the proposed access road along Old Colony Road. Don't you show catch basins there? Am I missing something?
Yeah, so I think what they're saying is they would like an overflow connection into the street drainage system. The previous plan,
Okay.
they requested that we did not connect, so I was kind of taking that same idea here, but we
Gotcha.
can certainly do that.
I like the concept of not connecting. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Michael?
I'm all set.
Tim?
I'm all set, thank you.
Same. I mean, you know, there's, I think you did a good job for preliminary. I don't see anything that I would object to. You know, it meets current zoning, minimum lot area frontage. I'm personally okay with the waiver because you have adequate access to proposed lots for intended use, and I believe it keeps with the character of the area. So the only thing I would say is, Tim, if you do make a motion to approve I'd recommend just including the bullet points on the DPW memo. And a motion to approve would include reading of the findings found on page 2 of the staff report.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve preliminary subdivision plan number 828, WinnDevelopment Company LP, 307 Main Street, preliminary plan dated January 23rd, 2024 by Beals and Thomas with the following findings. 1, the application for tentative approval of preliminary plan was submitted by WinnDevelopment Company LP dated January 23rd, 2024. Finding 2, the preliminary subdivision plan is shown on the plan entitled 307 Main Street Preliminary Plan dated January 23rd, 2024 by Beals and Thomas. Finding 3, the applicant has requested a waiver from the subdivision rules and regulations in accordance with section 801.5A. The board may waive strict compliance with these requirements when, in its judgment, such action is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent or purposes of the subdivision control law. In accordance with section 801.5A of the Code of the Town of Barnstable waiver criteria, the planning board has made the following findings. A, granting of the waivers requested are in the best interests of the citizens of the town. B, the plan is well-designed and in keeping with the general design principles set forth in Article 5 of the subdivision rules and regulations. C, there is adequate access to the lots for the uses intended thereon. And D, the plan is in keeping with the character of the surrounding area.
Great, thank you, Tim. Do you want to include a finding to include the bullets from the DPW memo?
Perhaps any other departments that may, if I may.
Yeah.
I'd like to incorporate the memo of DPW and also perhaps any other departments that may provide comments between now and the definitive subdivision plan.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You want to add that finding?
Sure, so finding 4 would be that the comments from the memorandum from the Department of Public Works dated February 26, 2024 should be included in the definitive subdivision application plan, as well as any other department comments that come in the next, before the next application.
Yeah, perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matthew. All those in favor, Matthew?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Matters approved. Thank you. Excellent. Moving along, we're going to go to LCP update once Jim returns. But before we go to that, why don't we look for approval of minutes? Looking for a motion to approve the February 12th, 2024 draft minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. And a second?
Second.
Sorry, thank you, Matthew. Seconded by Michael. All those in favor, Matthew?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Now off to Jim for an LCP update.
LCP update. So the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee is now meeting twice a month in order to move things along and provide a product back out to the town for review. At our last meeting, we've reviewed the natural resources chapter, the goals and strategies for that chapter, and have provided responses or edits back from the committee's initial review of that chapter. We will be moving on to the facilities and infrastructure chapter next, which is March, I believe, 14th. That Thursday, that Thursday, so I believe it's March 14th or very soon there. And then after that, after March, we will be going to each of the villages in April with the first 4 chapters that have been produced to date. So we'll be going to each village and getting their input, making sure we're still on target as to what we heard over the first phase 1 outreach and get any feedback. So we'll be posting the meetings that we will be out and about for April here very soon. We're just nailing down dates and locations.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And let's see, future meetings, March 11th and March 25th, 2024, here at 7 p.m. Anything else anybody has to add before we adjourn? Yes.
Just any new, for staff, any new stuff coming down the pipe? I know we've had a change in town council, that sort of thing. Any new information or guidance we've gotten from them?
No formal guidance just yet, but I'm sure I know we've had some good discussions in person, and probably we'll get some guidance in the near future.
Great.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Matthew?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Meeting is adjourned.